Hello class, my name is Joseph Campodonaco and I'll be discussing historical analysis of Theravada Buddhism, my interpretation of a historical analysis of Theravada Buddhism, rather. Please note that there will be a disclaimer at the bottom where it says there may be some phonetical errors because there's a whole lot of words in here that I have a hard time understanding and pronouncing, rather. Okay. Alright, also known as Doctrine of the Elders, Theravada Buddhism is most common in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Burma. Theravada Buddhism is also known as Southern Buddhism, Hinayana, or the Lesser Vehicle. This is the most accurately practiced form of Buddhism, and is said that the lineage can be traced back to the original followers of the Buddha. In other words, they believe that their practices are the most original form of Buddhism. So they actually believe that they are the closest to the actual way that the Buddha practiced. Theravada Buddhists follow the Eightfold Path, which consists of the right view, the right mindfulness, the right concentration, the right effort, the right action, the right speech, and the right intention. This, along with the Four Noble Truths, originate in a language called Pali. It is thought that this language was probably spoken in central India during the time of the Buddha. Forward to the Buddha. While the Buddha was alive, his personal attendant or servant, his name was Ananda, was believed to have memorized all of his teachings. Him, along with 500 senior monks, spoke and were said to have memorized his teachings, and the quote, "Thus I have heard," became the phrase before all of his teachings. These teachings were passed down through the monastic communities through oral or verbal communications. These teachings were divided into three sects: the Vinayana Pitaka, the Sutta Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. These are referred to as the three baskets, or also known as the Tripitaka. By the 3rd century, Theravada monks in Sri Lanka created a series of commentaries on the Tripitaka. Through the 4th century up through the 5th century, Common Era, CE, the Tripitaka was translated into Pali, which is that native language that we spoke of earlier. Although the Tripitaka has been translated into many different languages, Theravada students are still committed to learning it in Pali, in the Pali language. Until the late 19th century, the teachings of the Theravada were unknown outside of Southern Asia. This was over 2,000 years ago and grew to what it is now. Theravada Buddhism throughout Asia spread in several ways. The exact lineage of Theravada Buddhism is not quite exact. However, there is enough evidence that point to some of its origins. I will name a few. The Shakyamuni Buddha, or Siddhartha Gautama, primarily moved from city to city where he traveled, basically sharing his views and beliefs to whoever would listen, which is the first thing I have listed here, which is basically that he just went from city to city and spoke, and whoever would listen, he would say whatever he had to say, listen, discuss with whomever gave him his ear, basically, and shared his views and beliefs of what Buddhism is. The purpose of spreading the word for him was to help others overcome unhappiness and suffering. Ultimately, when these very monks, along with the Buddhists rather, him and his monks would do the same thing. They would go to different cities and whatnot and discuss their beliefs with other people. So ultimately, when they settled in these cities and in their towns, they became, I guess, more known and they were able to get a bigger following because they were actually now living in the city. Okay. The most profound focal point where Buddhism started in its upward trend would be in an area that was known as the Oasis State along the Silk Road, which is number 2 on the presentation. This can be traced back to as early as the 2 centuries dating before the Common Era. The Silk Road was a network of trade routes where many people from different areas of the continent came to buy and sell goods. This road was a tool in which the Buddhists could use the Silk Road as a central focal point where they could spread the word of the Buddha. Because there were so many people in this very area, this proved to be a breeding ground where monks could spread the word. It was actually rather a very successful breeding ground. The Silk Road without the Silk Road, it is highly unlikely that Buddhism would have spread in the capacity that it did. The network of roads created pockets of followers who in turn took the word of the Buddha to their hometowns. These pockets went from the Silk Road into whatever city or town that they were living in, and in turn they would take those the word of the Buddha, and then in their hometown and their area where they lived, they would spread the word. So because there was a central focal point in the Silk Road, there was a lot of people that gathered together, and they were able to, I guess so to say, plant a seed and then take that seed to where they lived, and they could plant further seeds in other people. Okay, so to add to that, the network of roads created pockets, like I said, followers who in turn took the word of the Buddha to their own hometowns. This is what they call assimilation through cultures. Another important factor in the spread of Buddhism, which is the number 3 here, which is Emperor Ashoka. He was the 3rd king of the Maurya dynasty from approximately 269 to 232 BCE. The exact dates are unclear on that because there's really no exact proof of when he was the ruler. He was more of a do as I do rather than do as I say kind of emperor. He tried to set an example of his followers. So rather than saying something like don't pick up a cigarette and smoke, and him smoking, he actually didn't pick up a cigarette and didn't smoke. So he tried to show his people that he could actually do as he says. He endorsed Buddhism and used non-traditional ways of spreading his beliefs by posting engravings of the Buddha's word on like iron pillars. So throughout his communities or wherever he lived, or his realm rather, there are signs all over the place, kind of reminding people of what his belief is, to try and instill in the people that Buddhism was the best. He ultimately tried to live an ethical life by following these principles himself, which ultimately would inspire others to do the same. Thanks to Emperor Ashoka, Buddhism soon took root in South India and southern Burma. This helped other kings introduce Buddhism into their realms as well. So he kind of set the example and led the way for not only himself and for other kings to follow. So basically, from humble beginnings over 2,000 years ago to the present day, Buddhism is one of the fastest growing religions in the world. Quite frankly, it's very interesting. I don't know that I could do it myself because it seems a bit strict, but to each his own. So thank you very much for watching my short presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.